one of the things I wanted to mention is that there's a kind of a language issue as a designer that I wanted to get on the table, and that is talk about hitting the reset button. And Jeff Immelt has been quoted as saying that that's sort of where we're at. And other people are familiar with an article in The Economist magazine that said we need to reboot our global economic system. And the problem with things, words like reset and reboot from a design standpoint is they don't necessarily get you to a new, better design. They may clean up the existing design, but what you're left with is a clean version of something that has crashed before and will crash again. So I am really delighted that one of the themes of this conference is managing as designing, because what I hope people will come away with is the recognition that we need to literally come up with a better design, one that won't crash as the one we've had has. So that's a distinction in language, but also a key design concept that we want to come up with a new design, or we want to redesign how we are organized, not just hit the reset or the reboot button. And from a large design system perspective, I found a book in my library from 1991, just before the Rio conference, and it was a book supported by the UN prior to that conference. It's called Only One World, Ours to Own, Our Own to Make and to Keep, written by Gerard Piel, the founder of Scientific America, with an introduction from Maurice Strong, who was the Secretary General of that first Rio conference. And there's a little quote I wanted to read because it gets to this design question. It says here in the first chapter, the prospects for the transfer of such assistance are strongly conditioned by the long-standing relationship between the rich and poor. Ever since the beginning of civilization, people have organized their social institutions to secure the inequitable distribution of goods that were always until recently in short supply. Now the inequity that divides humankind is international. People are inhabitants of rich nations or of poor nations, and the rich go on living at the expense of the poor. And the final paragraph in this is, from historic habit, nations make policy and people continue to root their morality in the assumption that there can never be enough to go around. The Industrial Revolution has confuted that assumption. If people will use industrial technology equitably and wisely, they may at last, in the words of Indira Gandhi, make this only earth a fit home for man. The concept of how we have designed ourselves being based historically on a scarcity assumption, when technology now makes it possible for us to design based on an abundance or at least a sufficiency assumption. It was known back in '91, but it really doesn't get talked about enough. This notion of our fundamental reality being one where there is enough for everyone, especially if we use the unlimited supply of energy from the sun. So that's something, as a designer, I hope this design conference takes advantage of, that we really are living in a world where it's possible for us all to make it. It doesn't have to just be a dream. It doesn't just have to be a moral argument. It really is a scientific principle. And in order to help accomplish that, there's an insight I'd like to share from an innovation I came across. One of the big players in corporate social responsibility is General Electric. And Jeff Immelt even signed GE up to the UN Global Compact last November. GE owns NBC Universal, and so they don't just make things, they also entertain us. And NBC Universal includes the Sci-Fi Channel, which a couple of years ago created an initiative called Visions for Tomorrow. It's a public service outreach effort to use the power of science fiction to communicate with the public about what kind of a future we can have, using storytelling, using all the tools that science fiction brings to bear to help people think about what can the future look like. This initiative is virtually unknown to the CSR community, but it can potentially be a tremendous partner, especially now that General Electric has signed on to the UN Global Compact. There's an advisory board that's stellar. It includes people like Sir Richard Branson and the inventor Dean Kamen, a politically connected person, John Podesta, who was Clinton's chief of staff. This is a huge resource. I really encourage us in the CSR movement to find a way to leverage, to communicate with Mr. Immelt about the potential he's got to do good in creating a critical mass of support from the public for socially responsible business. Especially given that if you ask your ordinary person on the street about business right now, they immediately think of Wall Street, they immediately think of how business has destroyed value almost across the scale. How great would it be if the public knew that the CSR movement existed, and if GE got credit for helping wake the public up to this marvelous part of the business world, which again gets so little attention. I researched the New York Times website. They have never written an article in 10 years that the UN Global Compact has existed about the UN Global Compact. You don't hear stories on the major networks about our movement, but we can reach the public through innovations like the Sci-Fi Channel's Vision for Tomorrow initiative, and one other bit of research I discovered was that the Jimmy Stewart Museum, and that's another great home of entertainment, is looking to celebrate 2009 as the 70th anniversary of the movie Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, which came out in 1939 in October. And that's a movie with a business story at its core. And if we want the corporate social responsibility movement to be part of the American public policy making conversation, how fantastic would it be if we partnered with the Jimmy Stewart Museum, which is looking for ways to celebrate that anniversary, and turn that anniversary into part of a national dialogue on just what exactly are we going to have as a relationship between business and society. Are we going to continue to give business what it wants to the extent that doesn't serve all of society, or are we going to create a better balance? And since entertainment gives people ways to think about all this, I'm personally in touch with the Jimmy Stewart Museum and am trying to build that bridge between their desire for this celebration and the CSR movement. So those are the insights and innovations I wanted to share. Delighted to be here from New York for the second time. I was at the first Business as an Agent of World Benefit conference, and am thrilled that the work is continuing and growing and developing.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Bo Dane. I'm here, I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm privileged to have been able to participate the last 3 days in this conference. I work in the recycling industry for the Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District. I spend most of my days helping businesses start, expand, and improve waste reduction and recycling programs. Literally anything from an Eaton Corporation or an Alcoa to a salon or a strip mall, an apartment building. So I'm very passionate about sustainability. And this week is particularly special for me because it's my first week as a part-time MBA student at Weatherhead. And I'm just feeling an incredible sense of gratitude that I'm going to get choked up, that this conference took place my first week of Weatherhead. I think occasionally in life you get a sense that you're in the right place at the right time. And this conference for me is a confirmation of that. I'm in the right place at the right time. And my first class at Weatherhead is statistics. For those of you who've had it, it's definitely not the easiest class. But I'm actually enjoying it so far, and I'm learning. But to have this conference going on where I'm just so inspired and learning so much, whether it's about Cradle to Cradle or our relatedness, or the fact that, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? I'm just so inspired to action and very grateful to CASE and the UN Global Compact, Dr. Cooper Ryder and Ron Fry and Jean and Emily and everyone who's involved. So I want to say thank you.